Well, welcome everyone to CILC's Community of Learning. Today I'm excited to announce that we are going to be joined by the Alaska SeaLife Center. Just to let you all know that throughout our time together, if you have questions or if Alex, our presenter, asks you questions, you're going to go to the bottom of the screen and click on the little chat bubble, and then he'll be able to see all of those questions and answers that you are putting in there. So at this time, what I'm going to do is hand it on over to Alex. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, perfect. Well, again, we are talking to you live from Alaska, and I actually saw in the chat. I was waiting here as people were signing. We've got some folks up here from Alaska, but just in general, really quick, I want to ask. Go ahead and type in the chat if you have ever been to Alaska. Obviously, the people already living here have, but go ahead and type on in there. I'd love to know if anyone's visited Alaska. Well, I saw at least one yes in there, but a lot of no's, and at least one I hope I can or I want to. So that's great. We want to get you up here to Alaska someday and show you the Alaska SeaLife Center in person. But right now, what we're going to be doing is actually talking about the Alaska SeaLife Center, about what we do at the Alaska SeaLife Center. I'll just really briefly give you like SeaLife Center in a nutshell. And then I actually will be talking about some of the animals that we have both at the Alaska SeaLife Center and just in the ocean here in Alaska. We're going to be talking about some marine mammals, which are really fun to talk about. So we'll get started with that. But since many of you have not been up to Alaska, I figure we'll give a brief little introduction. I know my overhead's a little shiny here. Let's see if I can tilt it. So Alaska, way up here, right? Kind of out of the way. But it's a big state. I can drag it on down here. And with our Aleutian Islands, we reach pretty far across the rest of the country. Hawaii is safe over here, I suppose. But if you ever do come to Alaska, even though it's such a large state, there's not a ton of large cities. So if you flew into Alaska, you'd probably fly into either Juneau, Anchorage, or Fairbanks. Juneau's not really even on the road network, though. So if you wanted to visit us at the SeaLife Center, you'd want to fly into Anchorage, and then you would just drive south for about 2 hours until the highway just ran out. It actually just stops. I haven't always lived here. You know, I used to live in like Montana years back, and it seems extraordinary to me that the highway just ends. But that's what it does. And when the highway ends, this will be the building that is in front of you. So this is the Alaska SeaLife Center. We don't quite have this much snow right now. It's been raining the past few days, actually. But this is the Alaska SeaLife Center from the outside, the building across from you when the highway ends. Probably the easiest building in Alaska to find with those directions. But when you get inside, lots of pictures, lots of models, but you know, that's so-so. The cool stuff is the animals themselves. And once you really get in there, we've got seals. There's some video of some harbor seals. Right now we have some spotted seals in their place at the moment. And then, of course, the Steller sea lion, even larger. And those first two animals, those are what we're going to be talking about largely today. But we also have diving birds. Here's some pigeon guillemots and some tufted puffins, very colorful birds. And those can actually dive all the way down to the bottom of their 22-foot pool there. Lots of things you might expect at an aquarium or a SeaLife Center. Right? Fish, we have a rockfish right there. And lots of invertebrates as well, animals without backbones, like our sea stars, like our sea anemones. We even have a touch tank where you can come over and feel those animals and actually feel the water as well. We pump it in from our bay here. It's pretty cold. And a lot of what we do at the SeaLife Center is education. Our job at the SeaLife Center is to learn about Alaska's marine ecosystems and then share what we learn. And we can also help the animals. So that little otter there is part of our wildlife response program. Same for the seal. Those are injured, orphaned, ill animals that we bring in, we treat, and sometimes we can release, like that harbor seal, but sometimes they're non-releasable. If they're really injured or come in too young, we either have to keep them or we have to find another forever home for them. And we constantly have researchers trying to learn more about these animals. This researcher's gig is actually pretty fun. She gets to watch Steller sea lions on an island about 30 miles away from us. She just watches them with remote cameras, kind of like you're watching this program now. But we can actually get out into the water and check these animals out really up close. It just does require a lot of gear. That water is about 40 degrees year-round, you definitely want a dry suit if you're hopping in there. And that's kind of the SeaLife Center in a nutshell. This is the view off of our back porch here out over Resurrection Bay. So I saw two questions right off the bat. Do we have otters? So in Alaska we do, and behind the SeaLife Center, always in the water there are. And you saw that one that came in through the Wildlife Response Program, but we don't currently have any otters right now. And then another question, do we have penguins? We do not have penguins. So everything at the Alaska SeaLife Center can be found in Alaska. And unfortunately, penguins, right, we think of them as being very cold weather. They are, but they're cold weather on the other side of the globe, all the way down in the Antarctic at the bottom of the globe. All of our animals up here are from the Arctic, up at the top. And so we have our puffins, which kind of resemble penguins in a way. They're not very closely related, however. But our puffins can swim down underwater. In the wild, they can get down more than 100 feet. In fact, we have a bird here called the murre, the common murre, M-U-R-R-E. And it certainly looks the most like a penguin of all of our birds. And in the wild, it has been found diving as deep as 600 feet or more. So they can get down really deep. They use their wings to swim their way down to the bottom, just like a penguin. However, our birds can still fly. That's one of the differences between them and penguins. But what we're going to be talking about today are the marine mammals. And I see a question right now actually about humpback whales. So that's a marine mammal that we don't have at the SeaLife Center. We don't have any whales at the SeaLife Center. We have actually treated some whales through our response program, though. Just a few years ago, we had a little baby beluga whale that came in through the response program. That's like the only whale I've ever seen at the SeaLife Center, but we do get humpback whales in Resurrection Bay. So I'm actually going to put up a video of some stellar sea lions swimming around, because that's going to be the first mammal I think we'll talk about. This one here is catching a fish. That is how they're actually eating. They go and they catch those fish. And then I want you to look at how they're swimming. You just saw they're very fast enough to catch a fish. But now they're kind of being lazy. I want you to look at how they're swimming, because these are marine mammals. And since they're mammals, that means they have some things in common with us. Like, for example, they have hair or fur, and they also have to breathe air. Even though they're swimming underwater really, really well, they still have to come up to the surface to breathe air. Another thing that's similar to us is they are warm-blooded. And all that means is that they have a body temperature, and their body temperature can't change too much in order for them to be healthy. It has to stay kind of the same. And in this very cold water, if I just jumped in by myself, I would not be able to stay warm. I would become hypothermic, which means I get too cold, dangerously cold. And so these creatures have a way to stay warm that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But go ahead and type in the chat if you want to just describe maybe like 1 or 2 words. How are they swimming? What are they using to swim? Go ahead and type that in the chat. Fast. They're fast. Fins, flippers. Excellent. Yes. Oh, someone even specified the front flippers. I like that. So that is one of the things that makes seals and sea lions different from us. Seals and sea lions are in a group of animals called pinnipeds. Kind of a goofy word. Always sounds like pinhead. But pinniped means that they are flipper-footed animals. Instead of having 4 limbs, some of them ending in hands, some of them ending in feet, or paws, or anything like that, our seals and our sea lions have 4 flippers. They have big front flippers on the sea lions, and then they have some back flippers as well. And those are what they're using to swim through the water, fast enough to catch fish, right? I'm never going to win a race against a stellar sea lion or even a seal. They're going to swim a little bit differently because they're using their fins to swim, and they're a shape that we would say is hydrodynamic. That just means it cuts through the water really easy, and it's kind of a sausage shape. It might be a little rude to call our animal sausage shaped, but it is what it is. But some of you noticed that the stellar sea lions are actually using their front flippers to swim. They've got really, really big front flippers, and they use those like wings to swim around. I'm actually going to pull up a video of a harbor seal swimming because they don't have those big front flippers. They have little front flippers. Now, to give you an idea of the size difference between these animals, harbor seals can get up into low hundreds of pounds, 200 would be kind of pushing it on them in this little video here. But the stellar sea lions get big. The stellar sea lions can actually get up over 2,000 pounds. And so those stellar sea lions you were just seeing in that video, they were probably anywhere between 600, 700 pounds on the smaller ones. And there was one big one in there that was probably about 1,500 pounds or so. And that would be our male. So what we're showing here with this clip is, it's kind of goofy. It always makes me think of a person dancing. But we're showing the back flippers of a harbor seal. So the stellar sea lions used their front flippers to swim, but our harbor seals have tiny front flippers. They use their back flippers to swim instead. And they do have a tiny little tail in there that you saw when they were doing that handstand down by the window. So I'm seeing a couple questions. What kind of fish are behind me when I show myself? So this is actually a view from that bird habitat we saw at the very beginning. And we've been streaming this on YouTube live every day. So if you're looking for a little relaxation later on, try to find Alaska SeaLife Center on YouTube, and we've got this streaming. But someone asked, don't the seals have blubber? Yes, they do. And so blubber is something that seals and sea lions, and a lot of marine mammals in Alaska, something they have. And it's a healthy layer of fat. And that is what keeps them warm. It's not really their fur that keeps them warm. I'm going to show you some fur. I actually have a few pelts here. All right. I'm going to show you, I think, let's do a stellar sea lion pelt. So this is just their fur. And people always ask, where did you get this fur? So if an animal is found dead in the state, right, we usually get called about it. We're the people that can take care of sick and injured animals. But when one shows up dead, we kind of wonder, how did it die? Is there something we need to know about? Are there diseases, or are they not getting enough food and that sort of thing? So usually the agencies, either federal agencies or state agencies that are in charge of these animals, they'll call us and they'll say, hey, do you want to check out this animal? And then we can actually use things like its fur, or we're going to see some bones a little bit later on. We can use those to learn from. Because even once an animal's dead, we can still learn from it. It's a little gruesome, but you'd never get this close to a stellar sea lion's fur otherwise. So I'm going to show you this fur. It's kind of golden in color. I'm actually going to put it, I've got that little overhead. I'm going to put it up here, and we're going to see what this fur looks like up close. So it is actually not that long. You can see my finger sort of working through it here. It's really short hair. And it is, it's not hair that I would think would keep me warm in the water. And it doesn't, it's not really what's keeping the sea lions warm. I even have some seal fur here. Let's take a look at the seal fur and see if that's any better. So there's some seal fur, differently colored, but still not very long. So it's not the fur that's keeping these animals warm. It is that blubber. And again, these two came from animals that were found dead. And so we're allowed to use these. You can't just like go and, if you found a sea lion dead, for example, you wouldn't be able to just keep the pelt off of them. There's pretty stringent permitting on these animals. But because we're an educational facility, we like to use these to show people up close what that fur actually looks like. It's not long. And if you want to know kind of what it feels like, I think it feels like a very short-haired dog. It's not the softest fur, actually. It's a little rough. I'm going against it, obviously, but these animals don't use their fur to stay warm. They use that blubber to stay warm, that healthy layer of fat. And you're going to see that layer of fat in action in another more entertaining way in just a second, because I want to ask you, right, if we were talking about whales, another marine mammal, we would not want to see whales on land. They don't do well on land. Do you think seals and sea lions are okay on land? Do you think they can walk? Let's see on the chat if you think they can walk. Got some yes. And a yeah. No one really saying like, maybe. So I'll show you a video here of them walking. Really quick though, we've got the goofy back flippers again there on our seal. So here is a stellar sea lion on land. They can come right up on land. And because they have those big front flippers, they can actually move around pretty well. You can see they kind of gallop a bit with those big front flippers, but it's hard work. Whew, he's like tired now. He's all worn out from that. But they can move around on land, the Steller sea lions, especially because they have those big, big, big front flippers. Oh, someone asks, do they breathe underwater? They do not. They have to hold their breath the whole time they're in the water. They don't have gills or anything like that. So here's the Steller sea lion, again, up on land. I want to compare this to the harbor seal on land because the Steller sea lion is using its big front flippers. And we said that the harbor seal did not have big front flippers. So let's take a look at harbor seals moving on land. A little different. They have it a lot tougher on land. They do still come up on land, but they don't move as well. They kind of have to bounce around. They're very cute, but we're going to get a front shot here in just a second. This one bouncing. You can see with that blubber, they are a very, very bouncy animal. You can kind of see that fat just rolling, but that's a healthy fat. Oh, someone asks, do we train them to do tricks? So we're not training our animals to like jump through flaming hoops or anything like that, but we do train our animals. And that's because we need to work with these animals and we want to keep our work with them as little stress as possible for the animals. So when we're working with them, we do have trained behaviors, like that little white thing that the handler just put out. You can see the seal comes over, touches their nose to it, and they get a fish. So that's a really simple behavior that we'll talk about a little bit later on. Someone asks, how long can they stay underwater? So they can hold their breath for quite a while. Some animals can hold their breath, or some marine mammals hold their breath a lot better than others. For example, whales can hold their breath for quite a long time. But our harbor seals, for example, they can stay down for half an hour or so on average, a little bit longer if they need to. And in fact, I've seen them just take a nap in the habitat before, where they'll just sit on the bottom and they're basically snoozing. And every once in a while, they'll kind of float on up to the top and take a breath, and then they'll come on back down and relax on the bottom. It's a little frustrating sometimes because people, when they're visiting us at the SeaLife Center, they'll come over and they'll say, I think your harbor seal might be dead because it's just laying on the bottom. And you have to go over and you have to be like, no, they're taking a nap. And we sit there and we watch them until that seal kind of floats up to the top and takes a breath and then comes back down. So they're pretty goofy animals, but they can hold their breath for quite a long amount of time. That kind of answers this question of where do they sleep. And they can sleep in the water. They can also sleep on land. The Steller sea lions seem to sleep on land a little bit more. They're such a big animal and they can move pretty fast that they're not as timid on land. They're not as shy about being out and to sleep on land, because if some predator shows up, they're pretty big and they can move fast, the Steller sea lions. The seals, on the other hand, they seem to always want to be close to the water or even in the water when they're napping. And that could just be they're not as fast, right? So they don't want to be caught by surprise by some predator, some scary thing, and not be able to get to the water. Because you saw in the video, they don't move as fast. All right, are seals like penguins? I'm not sure in what way you're meaning that, but they have some similarities, right? They are streamlined. They're that hydrodynamic shape again, right? So if you look at like a penguin swimming through the water, they're kind of pointed on both ends, and our seals and sea lions are as well. I'll pull back up that video of the seal swimming around. You can see they're pointed on both ends there. Ooh, what do they eat? I'm getting a couple questions. What do they eat and how much do they eat? Let's take a look at our animals eating. I'm actually going to show you a clip here of a sea lion eating pretty much an entire salmon. In fact, it is an entire salmon. So I'm going to show you this. This is a Steller sea lion bull. So this is a male. This one is named Woody. You can get a nice close-up of that face as well, but he is waiting for his fish. See those big eyes? They can actually kind of push those eyes out a little bit. You can see how they're bulging there so that they can look forward, but watch how he eats this salmon. The salmon is about the size of your arm, by the way. There he goes. He just swallowed that salmon whole. So I am going to show that one more time. Now, as far as how much they eat, The Steller sea lion's actually the bull, the male, he's going to eat the most of all of our animals per day, and he can eat up to about 60 to 70 pounds of fish a day in the wintertime. That's when they're eating the most. In the summertime, they actually put on a lot of weight, the bulls do, but then they stop eating. And that's because they're putting on weight for breeding season. They actually get territories. If you remember that research I talked about a little earlier on where we were watching the sea lions on an island about 30 miles away, that's what this is. And these two bulls in the middle are wrestling. That's why they put on all that weight. So the bulls go from about 1,500 pounds in the wintertime to over 2,000 pounds in the summertime. And they use that weight to just push each other. They're not trying to kill each other, anything like that. They're just trying to push each other out of their territories. And so the bigger you are, the more weight you've put on, ideally, the better territory you can get. And you can see there's a tiny little pup down there. Got in the middle of that fight, but was okay in the end. But this is that footage from that the cameras that we used to look at the wild sea lions. So yes, the males, they're eating about 60 pounds, 70 pounds of food a day, sometimes in the winter time. But then in the summer, they'll actually go down to as little as 5 or 10 pounds of food a day. Here at the SeaLife Center, in the wild, they may actually not eat at all for 90 days. They'll just starve themselves while they guard their territories because the territory is on the land and all their food is in the water. A couple questions here. How long can they live? So we actually had a harbor seal here at the SeaLife Center get up into like 30 years old, maybe a bit older than that. And the sea lions, the males in the wild will live to be about 15 to 17 years. The females can live into their early 20s. But here at the SeaLife Center, we tend to have them both kind of live about the same amount of time into the early mid-20s or so. And part of that is because we have like vets here. If you ever have to take your animal to a veterinary doctor to check out their health and that sort of thing, we have vets here on staff. And they can make sure our animals stay healthy. And for example, that harbor seal that got up to be 30 or so, he actually developed cataracts, which is something that like old dogs can get, for example, where his vision wasn't as good. And in the wild, those cataracts mean he probably wouldn't be able to hunt food as well, and he may not survive having that, even though it's not the most serious condition, right? I mean, it's just your vision going bad. It's not great. But here at the SeaLife Center, we can accommodate for that sort of thing. We can give them eye drops, and we always make sure they're getting food. So animals tend to live a little bit longer here at the SeaLife Center. What do they drink? That's a great question. So you may know you don't want to drink salt water. You don't want to drink ocean water. It's just too salty for us. It's not good. And our animals don't really just go drink the seawater all the time. Obviously, if they're swimming in the ocean and they're swallowing fish in the ocean, they're going to get some seawater down in their stomach, but they don't really just drink it. They get most of their fresh water, their actual ingested water. They get that from the things they eat. I'm going to show you a video of a seal eating here because we saw the sea lion eat and it didn't really swallow, or excuse me, it didn't really chew its food. It just swallowed it whole. So I want to see if I can show you a video of a seal eating. Here we are. That little white buoy, all right? So the animal is trained to touch their nose to that, and we can use that to train lots of behaviors then. If we want them to follow us, for example, we can move that buoy and they'll come with us. That way we don't have to like wrestle them, right? We don't want to stress them. This seal here, we're checking out his teeth. We'll actually brush their teeth, but watch as he gets that fish. He kind of just wiggles his tongue around. And then he goes back down to that buoy. He wants more fish. He's very drooly, very slobbery. But let's check out inside his mouth again. We'll open his mouth back up, and that fish is gone. So he actually just swallowed that fish. They do not really chew their food. Seals and sea lions aren't big chewers. I can actually show you. I've got a skull here talking about more kind of creepy things. I have a Steller sea lion skull that I'm going to put up under the overhead. I think it'll work there. And I want to look at its teeth because if I was just walking along the shore near the ocean and I just found a skull, I would actually be able to tell a little bit about maybe what that animal eats, or at least how it eats, just by looking at its teeth. So I'm going to put my overhead up here, and I'm going to grab this skull. Let's see. All right, so this is going to be a Steller sea lion skull. Let me zoom out. I might just have to hold it up. But I wanted to look at those teeth real close. I'll show you the whole skull in just a second. But if you look at these teeth, there's two things here. One, they're very dark. And you'll see that even on our animals here at the SeaLife Center. You know, I just said we brush their teeth, but their teeth look like this, even after we brush them. And that is because Steller sea lions, in their spit, in their saliva, they actually have like a brown pigment that kind of stains their teeth. It's actually good. So when we're brushing their teeth, we're looking for white plaque on top of that stain, and that is what we are brushing away. But if you look at these teeth, they don't have any molars. They don't have any flat teeth, and it's the same for those seals. They can catch fish really well because these teeth kind of lock together, zigzag here. They really are good at holding on to fish, but they can't chew them. Why is one bigger than the other? So these ones up here are like our canine teeth, right? They're very sharp. If the fish was too big, if it was just too big for them to swallow, they would actually be able to grab it with that and kind of shake their head and rip out a chunk that is small enough to swallow. But for the most part, they just want to catch their fish, toss their head, get it lined up down their throat, and then they will go ahead and swallow that whole. So just to give you an idea, here's that skull. And again, no molars, no flat teeth. If you think about, you know, if you're tearing at something, if you're tearing at like some beef jerky or something really chewy, you might use your canine teeth here, your pointed teeth. But if you're then chewing it, you're not chewing it with your front teeth. You're not really chewing it with your canine teeth. We're going to use our molars to chew. And the sea lions just don't have those. So they have to swallow all their food whole. I actually have another skull here. This one has its canines rebuilt with some clay. So those teeth look a little funny. But here is the Steller sea lion skull. I want you to guess what animal this next skull is, okay? I'm gonna get the skull because it's a little different. And it's a trick, I suppose. I'll let you know, this is not another marine mammal, all right? This is a land mammal. So we have the Steller sea lion, and we have this. What do we think this is? What do we think? A raptor skull. No, it's not a dinosaur skull. It's another mammal skull. This one has molars. I'm not sure if you can see that. Oh, our birds are diving around on my screen back there. A wolf, that's a good guess. A tiger? No. Or a lion? No. Now, it turns out this is actually the closest land relative to sea lions, which may surprise you if you're trying to guess the closest land relative to sea lions. I'm going to show you this up close. So again, we have those teeth up front. We rebuilt those because those were missing on this particular skull. But if we look at their teeth, they do have molars. This is a bear skull. This one's actually from a bear, from a grizzly bear, this particular one. So bears are the closest land relative of sea lions. And seals, actually, of the pinnipeds. Someone asks, do we have wolves? Not here at the SeaLife Center, but up here in Alaska, yes. We do have lots of wolves. And even around here in Seward, every once in a while, someone reports a wolf. They're not officially here in any sort of wildlife count, but they are on the peninsula. We are actually on the Kenai Peninsula here in Seward, and they are nearby. All right, so the bear skull. Oh, how can you tell how old they are? That's a good question. We know how old ours are because we frequently will see them born. For example, we actually just announced our female, Mara. She's our adult female Steller sea lion here. She's actually pregnant. So she'll be giving birth to a little sea lion pup here later this summer. We're all pretty excited about that. It's going to be really cute. I can actually show you what a sea lion pup looks like swimming next to a mom. We've got some footage of that that someone shot at the SeaLife Center. This is Eden. who's a female we had here at the SeaLife Center. And that is her with her pup, Pearl. Pearl was the name of the pup. So they are born very small. And you might think, right, being a marine mammal, you might think that those pups would be able to swim real well from the minute they're born. But unfortunately, that is not true. These stellar sea lion pups cannot swim well enough to like keep themselves up in the water until about a month old. They are born on the land. What does a pregnant sea lion look like? Someone asks. They're not quite as streamlined, I guess I would say. You know, their stomach swells a bit when they have that pup, because you can see, I mean, this pup here, obviously older than about a month because it's swimming quite well. And so, you know, you could imagine that little pup in there. Someone asks, how come the back fins look like they're cut up? All right, good question. So you can see, like on this one, the back fins kind of look ragged. Let's watch as she comes by. There's the front fins. And the back fins, they've got the little ragged edge. Those are actually their toes. Those weird little protrusions, those ragged bits, those are the toes. And they do actually have toenails, but the toenails are not out at the tip of the toes. The toenails are actually in from there because those toes are really, really floppy. Yeah, those are the toes. So if someone is impressed they have toes, I always think it's really cool. If you've ever seen like a dog sit down and scratch itself, where it like brings, you know, pretend this is my back leg. I'm not that flexible, but it brings its back leg up and it kind of scratches its side or something like that. Our sea lions do that too. If they have an itch, they'll just bring up their back foot. And because those toes are all floppy, the toes kind of like flop over and then they're scratching themselves. Their nails almost look like they come out of their knuckles. So yeah, they have toes. They're really, really cute. What do they look like when they're born, the sea lions? So the sea lions, you know, it's live birth. They're not hatched out of an egg or anything. So they're just born looking like a little tiny sea lion, just like a human baby is looking kind of like a little tiny human. I mean, our proportions are off. So I would say the cutest thing about the stellar sea lions when they are first born is their big front flippers are kind of extra big looking on them a little bit. And part of that is because they don't have the muscles yet to stand up with their front flippers. So they usually just kind of lay flat with their front flippers out next to them, like some sort of bat or something like that. Someone asks if they have names. They do actually have names. So we don't name everything at the SeaLife Center, for example, like our fish and that sort of stuff. They typically don't get names because we have so many of them. We just, like, no one would ever be able to keep track of the names. But for our mammals, they do have names. So right now we have 4 stellar sea lions. We have an adult male named Pilot. And then we have Mara, who's our female. She's pregnant. We don't have a name yet for the pup. And then we have 2 youngsters, 2 juvenile males. And their names are Forrest and Kuliak. So right now we just have 4. How old are they when they learn to move around? They learn to move very quickly. Like I said, this isn't too long after birth. You know, this is about a month or so. So the sea lions learn pretty quick. Seals learn much quicker, actually. Our harbor seals can swim like the day they are born up here. They figure it out really quick. The stellar sea lions take longer. So seals can actually be born in or really near the water. Sea lions are born on land. How do you choose the pup names? That's a great question. So our sea lions are all named after sea lion rookeries. And rookeries are the areas these animals come to breed. So if you remember that bullfight video, let me put that back up. This is Chiswell Island. So Chiswell Island is an island about 30 miles away from us. Here's an old picture of it. Let me pull up an old picture from 1978 of Chiswell Island. So this is Chiswell. Rookeries are areas the animals come to breed. They mate there, and then they'll also give birth there. So they are actually born on land. But that is Chiswell Island. And so our animals, right, like Pilot, Forrest, Kuliak, those are actually named after other rookery islands. So that's a fun one. Is Mara going to have a boy or a girl? We do not know yet. It's really difficult to actually tell. How fast do they swim? Ooh, I do not know their like speed limit. I don't know their their top speed. How do you know if they're male or female? That's a good question. So the females are much smaller. Let me show you really quick because she's just a good candidate for this again. All right, so this is Eden. She is a female. She was a smaller female, so 500 pounds, kind of like an average weight for a female. And they're always kind of this sleek. Even when they're pregnant, they're still pretty sleek. That is what an adult female looks like. Now let's put up what an adult male looks like, especially in the summertime. So here is Woody at about his biggest. You can see he is not nearly as sleek. He is very, very large. So that's one way you can tell a male versus a female in our stellar sea lions. Someone asks, are the remote cameras solar powered? How do they transmit? That's an awesome question. So our remote cameras do use solar power, and they also use some little wind power. There's little wind turbines out there. And then they beam that footage to us with radio. We don't actually have direct line of sight from the SeaLife Center to the rookery. Rookery is about 30 miles away. But there's actually a little spit of land that sticks out in Bay called Kane's Head. And up on top of that, we have a repeater station. So Chiswell Island beams the footage to Kane's Head, and then Kane's Head beams the footage all the way to the SeaLife Center, and that's how we get it. So yeah, it's just with radio and solar and wind power, and there's a bunch of car batteries that all get charged up from it. It's a really cool setup. Someone asks, can they kill you? Could a sea lion kill you? Are they dangerous? So we always want to tell people, if you ever see a marine mammal on a beach or something, even if it's not looking healthy, if you're worried about it, we still don't want you to get close to it. You should never touch a marine mammal or anything like that. You should always call, if you're in Alaska, you can call the Alaska SeaLife Center, but there's actually a national stranding hotline, or if you're in a national park, or if you're on like a beach and there's any sort of law officers around, you just contact the person that's in charge of that area, and they will be able to contact like ourselves or Fish and Wildlife or the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. Those are the groups that are in charge of these animals. So we never want you to get close because they can be dangerous. I mean, just think about with the stellar sea lions, even if they didn't want to hurt you, if they weren't trying to hurt you, if a 2,000-pound sea lion rolls into you, it'll hurt you, right? So the bulls are aggressive in the summertime, but they won't like chase you from really far away. They want to stay in their territory, right? They're guarding their territory. That's what they're most aggressive about. So someone wanted to know, there was a question about sea otters. I do want to talk about sea otters. We don't have any sea otters right now, but we have had them in the past. They come in through our wildlife response program. And actually, good time to plug this. We have a TV show on National Geographic. It just aired last week. We're going to have a new episode this week. And it's the SeaLife Center is one of the 3 facilities in the show. And if you want to know more about like how we take care of these animals, that sort of thing, tune on into that show. It is called Alaska Animal Rescue. And I believe it's on National Geographic Wild and probably Disney Plus as well. It'll be on there at some point. So you can always check that out. But I want to show you a sea otter here. I just got to get the right footage for you. Because sea otters are a little different. They are a marine mammal, but they are not a pinniped. If you remember what that pinniped meant, is that they had those 4 flippers. Sea otters have back flippers, and then they have front paws. You can actually see this sea otter is using those front paws to hold their food. Another thing you can see is that the sea otters actually do chew their food. So I have a sea otter skull, and this is a good way to kind of bring back, don't touch these animals if you ever see them, right? This is a sea otter skull, this teeny tiny little skull. But this tiny little skull has the bite force of a full-grown black bear, this tiny little skull, which is why we don't want to touch them, right? Like, I mean, if it bit you, it would really hurt. But they use that bite pressure to actually crunch through their food. So you can see here, like this one is banded by the Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's very important you have all these sort of things legally, if you do have them. But you can see here, the sea otter does have molars. Let me actually drop my light down a little bit. You can see those molars there. What do sea otters eat? Does anyone know? What do they like to eat? Fish. Not so much fish. Yes, shellfish I see in there. So shellfish, or clams, mussels, that sort of thing. And so you may be aware that they have the ability to like use rocks, for example, to crack open those shells, right? They'll just put like a rock on their chest and then they'll smack the shell into it. And that's one way they can crack open those shells, but they can also crack open the shells just by putting them in their mouth, and they use those molars to crunch them up. So they do chew their food, and that's why they have those big, big molars there. All right. I'm just looking here. Seeing about questions. Will they hit you with a rock? They will not hit you with rock, the otters. However, they do like to smack a lot of stuff with rocks. So when we have them here, we actually shell their food for them. Someone asked, what happened to Eden? Yeah, I keep talking about sea lions that aren't here anymore. So Woody, unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was 22 years old, I believe, which is really old for a male. In the wild, again, he probably would have lived to be about 15 to 17 years old. And part of that is because he puts on 1,000 pounds of weight and then he starves himself. But here we were always making sure that they were still getting food. And then Eden was transferred to another facility. So we actually, trying to think what it's called. It's a stud book. It's very strange. If you have an animal at an aquarium or at like a zoo or something like that, there's actually a person that keeps track of all the genes of those animals, all the genetics, and they figure out like where animals get transferred and that sort of stuff. But right now, our female is Mara. Are there sharks? So we do not have any sharks at the SeaLife Center right now, but we are doing some shark research about these sea lions, actually. It turns out there's a shark in the state, the Pacific sleeper shark, that's actually eating stellar sea lions out there in the wild. And you can learn more about that on our YouTube channel. We've actually been doing a series the past 2 weeks, and today we're going to have our third one at 2 o'clock Alaska time, which is 3 o'clock Pacific time, and 6 o'clock Eastern time in the US. But we've been talking with Amy Bishop, who's a researcher here at the SeaLife Center. They actually went out and they caught some Pacific sleeper sharks. And if they were small enough, they brought them back to the SeaLife Center to watch them for a couple weeks. So that's kind of really cool research that we were doing here. Seeing other questions. How many marine mammals? Lots of marine mammals here in Alaska. We, of course, have our stellar sea lions. We have harbor seals. Then we have a bunch of ice seals. So right now at the SeaLife Center, we have spotted seals and ring seals. So those are a type of ice seal. We have bearded seals. Trying to think. We have walruses as well. That's a marine mammal we didn't even talk about, but that's another pinniped. So the walruses are related to our seals and sea lions in that way as well. Animals a predator to them. What kind? So here in Alaska, if you are a stellar sea lion, there's only 2 things really big enough to eat you. Now humans could totally pose a predatory threat to these animals, but beyond humans, we're looking at orcas, or killer whales, you might know them as, and then those sharks, those large sharks. Those can definitely get them as well. Same for seals. Up north, where the polar bears are, and also ice seals, they have polar bears that eat the seals. The walruses can also be eaten by polar bears. What's behind me? One last person asked that. This is a stream from our bird tank, live stream that we have up on our YouTube channel if you're looking to relax a little bit later on. Are some of the animals near you endangered or threatened? I think we were down on our last couple minutes here. But yes, the sea lions, for example, the population of stellar sea lions near us is actually an endangered population. And that's part of the reason we have them here to do that work. Beyond just learning about them, we're trying to learn specifically some of the challenges that that population is having out there in the wild, which is one reason we're looking at the sharks, for example, to see, how many of them are getting eaten by sharks and that sort of thing. Are there narwhals? Way up north, there's narwhals. We don't get them down here anywhere near us.
Got time for one more question, Alex. I hate to cut you off.
I
One
know,
more.
there's like all of a sudden, boom, a lot of
I
questions.
know.
My favorite. All right, last question here. Do I have a favorite marine mammal? There's probably, so if it's a pinniped, my favorite are the ring seals because they are the smallest little ice seals ever, but they're very fierce. If we're talking about whales, either a humpback whale, which uses baleen, I love humpback whales, or a sperm whale, which is a toothed whale that actually hunts giant squid. So I think those, I could not pick between those three, but those are my three favorite marine mammals.
Perfect.
All right,
Thank you.
so I want to thank everyone. It sounds like we're out of time here, but hopefully you had a good time learning about the SeaLife Center, and hopefully someday you can make it up here.
Yes, thank you so much, Alex, for joining us today. I'm going to put in the bottom of our chat a link to the Alaska SeaLife Center website. And then Janine, unfortunately, we can't, we don't have time to answer your question.
I know. The otters get transferred. We don't keep them permanently. It's just another facility. So
Perfect.